Okay, guys, so this is just going to be another quick tutorial. No, I don't really do those. Um, this isn't going to be scripted. It's completely just me talking. I decided to make this because I thought it was a really interesting tool that I started to use. Now, a little bit of background. You might have heard of Twine before. It's been featured on like Lifehacker, things like that. Doesn't matter. Um, but I was looking for a way to prep um, pre-written adventure modules, in such a way that it would be easy for me to navigate through the text, but also just sort of a way of reviewing that module and sort of condensing that information just to sort of the things I wanted. There's another problem, of course, with adventure modules is that the way they're laid out is that's usually alphabetic and sort of in sequence. So, for example, you got a dungeon, and it's got all the rooms laid out, and it goes from T1, T2, T3, like whatever. The example I'm using today happens to use the letter T to describe it, and it describes each of those rooms in sequence. The problem is if you take a look at the map, it doesn't necessarily correspond. So I'm not going to show you the map. It's all copyrighted material. I don't want to get in trouble for any of that stuff. It's not monetized anyway, so it shouldn't matter. But either way, let's play it safe. Um, so basically, you know, you can go from T1, sure T2, sure T3, and then from T2, like it'll go in 5 different directions, and there's kind of really no way to track that. I guess you could just simply know it and look at the map, and then just sort of go back, take a look at the map, go back, find the corresponding entry. But unless you happen to have like a really well bookmarked and I guess linked PDF document or physical copy, that can get a little bit tiresome. So I'm trying this. It's this thing called Twine, and it's an interactive open source choose your own adventure creator. Pretty cool. So you can see I've got a couple of pages up, but I'm going to take you to the relevant one here. You can use it online, which is the thing I like the most. There's no downloads, and it just sort of works in your browser. I think you need to have uh, Java 8 installed, but that's about it. Okay. So I'm going to show you what I've been doing so far, and it's pretty WYSIWYG, and if you know how to do stuff on Reddit, you'll more or less know how to do stuff here. Um, Let me show you how this works. I'm going to show you from T2 because the T1 stuff I was more or less just copying and pasting off of a PDF, and I don't really want to do that too much. But I'm going to start at T2 to give you an idea of what happens. You can play through them from any of there, anywhere, but we'll start the story here for a second. I'm just going to show you what it does because it's really cool. Boom. Okay. So one of the things that I find with a lot of the pre-made modules is that their descriptions are based off of like the geography of the room, but not necessarily based off of the player's point of view. That's a problem with this one, so I've essentially rewritten that description. There was also another cool Reddit thread that I saw, and I can't find it anymore, but it was just some guy noting how he, it's like a professional game designer maybe, how he um, made his encounter notes, and are all really short freehand, so you can kind of see I'm doing something similar here. You can't see that, you don't know what I'm talking about, but either way, you get the idea. We get down to the trap, and the thing at the bottom here are these links. So let's go to the north door. So just quickly, right, 2 torches cast an eerie blue light across this vast frozen chamber. The walls to your left and right are covered with hundreds of skulls, each mortared into place. You see 2 sets of massive stone doors set in the walls in front of you, and a wide corridor framed by columns leading off into the darkness ahead. Right, so in this case, the character's coming in from the bottom of the door, and ahead of them, they can see directly across the room is the corridor. Left and right, there's doors and walls, things like that. Right, it's made from their perspective. Okay, so let's go to that north door. This is what I would sort of have up when I'm GMing during my Roll20 session. At least in theory, I haven't done this yet. It's the first time I'm using it. So let's click on the north door, and we get a description. So the wall along the right side of the corridor have collapsed into a mess of rubble. Up ahead, you see a set of double doors on the left wall. Beyond the doors, the passage continues. So these are obviously links, and those will take me to somewhere else. So I can click on that, and takes you to and it gives you another sort of description, and I can go back, and I can keep going into the room beyond. And here we have an encounter. We've got a hazard, the Balemorn. This is the ice tomb of the giant queen. But I can go back go back, or let's go back here. Or I've made an option because the passage that continues, this is sort of the logical end of this particular path along this dungeon. So we'll go back to the vestibule, and that's sort of, I'm back at this hub. Okay. So you can see that this is all done through this kind of like visualization, online chart kind of thing. You can sort of see all the logical arrows, where which sort of link leads to where. Double arrows, sort of or double-sided arrows for things where you can go back and forth. Single-way trips going one way, like with just single arrows. And I mentioned earlier that this is really easy to use. If you know how to use Reddit, you know how to use this. So I'm going to go do the Great Hall. So this is, again, kind of live demo, or not really live demo, but you get the idea. It's me doing this unscripted, just sort of show you how this works. One last thing before we go. This is only saved in your browser. You can't archive it by essentially downloading, I suppose, this page in its current state, and that way you can archive it, and I would suggest you do that pretty often. It is a bit of a pain because it will basically date stamp everything every time you archive, and so if you're doing it every 5 minutes, you're just going to get something that looks really similar with a 5-minute different timestamp on it, and those will save locally to your computer, and I believe you can just import those archives to keep working on it. But anyway, so let's work on the Great Hall. So here we go. You can do a whole bunch of things like add tags. This is, as I said, a really easy way to also sort of review your notes. So let's add a tag. I know this is going to be an encounter, so I'm just going to add the encounter tag. Now, I'm not really sure yet how important these tags are going to be. I'm doing them just for completion's sake, but I don't know if when I'm actually running the adventure, if it's going to be worth it. Okay, so I'm going to take a risk here. This is interesting. You erase it here, and you get all these cool intros, all this cool information. I'm kind of here to sort of demonstrate how some of this stuff works for you guys. So, so don't worry too much about these. But of course, you can always look at these if you want. It's got sort of like weird if stuff too. I'm not sure how relevant that's going to be. I guess it's good for storytelling, but for me, not so useful right now. At least not as far as I can find it. All this stuff's pretty interesting, though. The bolding, the italics. Like I said, Reddit Markdown notation seems to work as well. So, okay. But anyway, here you go. I'm going to copy something right off of the PDF file that I have for the Great Hall. All right, so it is, because it's PDF, you're just going to have to make sure that that's all in one. It doesn't matter because I'm not actually going to be using it. I'm going to be rewriting this. So what do we got? 2 lines, columns, parallel east and west walls. Support that. Okay, so again, east and west walls. Kind of pointless. It's not like your players are going to have a... well, they might be able to see that like just by physically looking at the map. But either way, right? Let's do something a little bit more descriptive. So we might say something like, you know, the darkened hall. This enormous. So I'm rewriting it, right? I'm going to be using a lot of the text from before. The enormous darkened hall. Darkened hall is lined. Lined with columns. I mean, lined with columns. The roof. Yeah. The roof. Not roof, ceiling. Vaulted ceiling. Alright, so, right. Player's perspective. Vaulted ceiling. Are they going to know that? Can they see it? I mean, there's nothing in here that tells me how high it is, but if I'm thinking of this tomb and thinking to create a sort of a more, you know, atmospheric environment, it doesn't make any sense, right? Again, so this is that problem I have where these pre-adventure modules are written with sort of there's information here that either isn't relevant or just, you know, doesn't make sense from a player's perspective, right? So enormous darkened hall, it's lined with columns. You can see that as soon as you get in that room. The walls, the ceiling is obscured by darkness, right? The ceiling is obscured by darkness. at the very edge of your light, you can see the walls begin to converge. Alright, so there you go. That's our vaulted ceiling. And in this particular room, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of doors. I'm going to sort of describe that, so now we'll talk about the doors. As you enter the room, you can see a single door on the wall to your left. And beyond that, another set of double doors. This is where I'll stop because that's literally all they can see. Literally all they can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the single door, double bracket, arrow, and that's going to go to T8. And what that's going to do is that's going to put an inline link. And T8 happens to be guard quarters. So, guard quarters. Now, let's stop here for a second because this is kind of the cool thing. I'm going to just hit escape. You can click the little X if you want. There's that X. You can see me hitting the control key. That's the X. You can click that if you want, or you can just hit escape. And boom, you've noticed it's created a new little text thing, right? That's why this is so good. I'm going to be anal and have everything like this. In fact, let's even do that, right? Because whatever, I like straight lines. All right, let's go back. Let's go back and edit. All right, so we've got a single door. And just if you look, if you want to see what that looks like in practice, all right, let's do this here. And boom, right? And so I know that I can click on that and it'll take me to that next passage. Now we haven't gotten there, so that's fine. Let's go back. Okay, so Great Hall. Why did that... Oh, right, because I had 2 of those here. Okay. Here I could, for example, talk about what happens with the guard quarters, what will happen with these guard quarters if they come out, things like that. But I'm not going to. I'm going to now just pretend that they can even go further into the dungeon, and I can describe the rest of it. I can describe the rest of it, and I'm going to just say that as you get... looks like I'm going to have to start that again. Right, so I could just actually take this off and keep it going, right? As you... did that work? Doesn't matter, it's fine. Continuing deeper into the room, you see 3 doors. At the end of the hall, is a set of massive double doors. A similar set of doors. Stands on the right. The door stand is set into the wall on the right. A smaller door. A smaller single door. Single door is set into the wall on the right. Oops, I made that first one should have been left. Not right, but either way, you get the idea, right? Okay. And that is really it. That's kind of what I wanted to show you. I'm hoping that this will give me a much more organic way of sort of going through these encounters and being able to sort of reference the material inside these encounters and this sort of like these descriptions sort of as a way of both studying or reviewing the material, the adventure material, and just sort of like figuring out what happens and what happens where, what goes where, and yeah, rather than using that sort of that story journal that I mentioned earlier, which is useful, but takes up real estate on my screen. Now, of course, you're thinking, okay, so this doesn't really work if you're not running, if you don't have more than one monitor. I suppose you could have this, I guess, on a separate tab, which would be useful. But for me, in my case, the fact that I can essentially jump forward and I've only got the information that I need, I can always go back, um, is incredibly useful. And I can, and it's just, it's just presented to me in a much more organic way. Uh, like I said, it doesn't take up real estate on my screen because I happen to run three monitors. Now, not everybody's lucky or even wants to run those three monitors. I suppose you could do something that like a you could have it you could have it sort of like a having two different windows on your single monitor if it's large enough or it can accommodate that. I wouldn't recommend doing this if you just had the one monitor to work with, but you could possibly, haven't tested it out, but you could, for example, run it on a tablet, maybe this on a tablet. That might be useful for you too, especially if you're already running a tablet with a PDF open for that adventure. You can use this and it might be better. And then if there's absolutely something that you don't know, you can always go back to that PDF. But this way, it's a little bit more distraction free in my opinion, and like there's not a whole bunch of like extra text that you need. All you've got is the information that you absolutely need to run this, and the rest could just sort of be your own imagination or improvisation. So anyway, that's all there is. I'll be linking the twinery.org website. That'll just sort of be in the notes below, or in the links. That'll be linked below. But other than that, that's really it. I don't know how long this was, but thank you for listening to me ramble once again.